Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. So, before we get into today's episode, I have a question for you. What would it be like if you could take a cocktail every morning that could dramatically reduce your risk of heart disease, obesity, diabetes, neurological disease, cancer, and simultaneously boost your mood, your resilience, and your energy levels? Well, for the last 2 years, I have, with the help of many of my friends, colleagues, experts in nutrition and nutritional supplements, been formulating 4 absolutely cutting edge, breakthrough, incredibly powerful supplements for 4 main things. And those things are: one, Energenesis is the most powerful mitochondrial enhancing supplement on the market for long-term energy production. Ultra Brain is the most powerful natural nootropic supplement for brain performance, cognitive performance, as well as mood optimization and long-term brain health simultaneously. We've got Immune Genesis, our latest supplement, which is all about, of course, supercharging immune function, which everybody wants to do right now. And we've got Energy Essentials and Superfoods, which is a comprehensive, ultra premium multivitamin and multimineral with all of the best forms of those vitamins and minerals, not the cheapy stuff that you find in common multivitamin and mineral supplements. And it's got a ton of amazing superfoods with proven metabolic benefits, things like spirulina, chlorella, pomegranate, and many, many others. So these are, within their respective 4 categories, bar none, the best supplements in those categories. And if you compare the dosages and the ingredients used to any other supplements within those categories, you will absolutely see that for yourself. And I encourage you to do that. So anyway, this is to let you know about those 4 supplements. If you don't already know about them, head over to store.theenergyblueprint.com and go check out the ingredients. We've put together pages with all of the ingredients, with all of the research on all of those ingredients. These are not just typical, sales pages with a lot of hype and claims. We're just showing you the actual research behind all of these ingredients that are in these formulations. They are incredibly powerful. We get incredible testimonials virtually every day from people using these supplements. And for many people, they're absolutely life-changing. So go check them out, get on these supplements. Like I said, this is a cocktail that you can use. And there's proven science to show that this cocktail can dramatically reduce your risk of numerous diseases while simultaneously boosting your mood and energy levels in a hugely powerful way. So go check it out, store.theenergyblueprint.com. Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back to the Energy Blueprint podcast. In this episode, I'm speaking with Dr. Dan Pompa on a fascinating topic: why diet variation is one of the big keys to weight loss and energy. I think you're going to get a lot of novel stuff from this. Enjoy the episode. Hey there, this is Ari. Welcome back. Right now, I'm with Dr. Daniel Pompa, who is a global health leader and innovator on a mission to educate practitioners and the public on the origins of inflammation-driven diseases, cellular detoxification, fasting strategies, and diet variation principles. Although trained as a chiropractor, his authority comes from the victory within his own battle, having overcome neurotoxic illness that was rooted in heavy metal poisoning. Dr. Pompa is the host of Cellular Healing TV and the author of the books Beyond Fasting and The Cellular Healing Diet. And in this presentation, he's going to be talking to you all about fasting and diet variation for superhuman energy. And he's going to be talking about some of the myths and misinformation out there and debunking that, and some of the problems or supposed problems with fasting and the way to do it optimally and who it's best for. So lots of great information we're going to get into, and I'm very excited to have you on, Dr. Pompa. Welcome.
Yeah, glad to be here. I love these topics, so let's dig in, man.
Cool. Yeah, let's do it.
Yeah, so look, I think your viewing audience, listening audience, followers are, understand the value of keto, low carb, fasting, intermittent fasting. I have been teaching fasting strategies since the 90s, believe it or not. So I kind of date myself. I always say jokingly, Ari, that I was into fasting. It was just me and some natural hygiene society people. And we disagreed because they were big vegans and I wasn't. So, but we united around fasting. And I'll say this, right? It's every religion on the planet disagrees about everything, even prayer, except one thing: fasting. So it is the oldest therapy known to man. However, the topic of this conversation is there's people, the beat on the street is women have trouble fasting. Can women fast? What about perimenopausal women? Can they fast, or should they fast, or even be keto or low carb? What about just anybody with thyroid hormone problems? Should they fast? Should they be in low carb keto? The answer is, well, they can. However, there's some strategies that, look, I've learned over the years doing this, but I train hundreds of doctors from around the world. And I'll tell you, the strategies I'm going to teach you today are strategies that we utilize, not just with all those conditions I mentioned, but even how to take fasting strategies, intermittent fasting, daily, longer fast, keto, any of it, paleo, to the next level with results. So that is what you get to look forward to. So
nice.
When we look here at the first slide, Beyond Fasting, it's actually my book name. So Beyond Fasting, it really does go beyond fasting, but 2 ultimate biohacks for hormone optimization, because that's the key, Ari, that if we can optimize our hormones, then we're going to maximize our results from any of these strategies: low carb, keto, paleo, fasting, intermittent fasting, whatever it is. So that's the answer. So the question then becomes the how to. Now, I always start off by saying, all this information, you can learn so much by reading studies and books, but truth be told, I got very sick and challenged myself. And really everything I teach, even my detox strategies, have really come out of my own battle. And I love this quote, and really no one knows who said it, but it's kind of been thrown around. But it's not genius, but courage that changes the hearts. And I believe we have to change the hearts of people to move people, whether it's get them to change their diet, their life, happiness, you name it. And I love the phrase "from pain to purpose," because that's my life. So, I have to say that I always tell a story, Ari, about when I was in Africa, and I was blessed to be invited to be a speaker at this huge leadership conference with presidents of different countries in Africa. It was a very important conference. And first time I spoke with a translator. So, that could go a bunch of ways. But after I was done speaking, the gentleman, he was in Zimbabwe. He was probably the second most powerful man there. There was Mugabe and there was him. He comes not running, but a brisk pace down the aisle to the stage to meet me. And I'm thinking, oh my God, what did I say? It could was it my excuse, no matter what, is I didn't mean that. It was lost in the translation. But he said, "Dr. Pompa, I have to tell you something, that your authority doesn't come from your years of learning. It comes from the victory God gave you." And I didn't know at the time exactly what he meant by that. But knowing that everything that I teach, the even reason I'm here today and blessed to teach thousands of doctors, it came out of my own battle. And that's where my courage, my boldness comes from, in what I teach, and definitely not genius. So I love that saying, and a place to start there. But look, I'd like to start with this because it just kind of lays a foundation. When we talk about fasting, I talk in my book about these 7 reasons why I believe that we are genetically, all of us are programmed to go into fasting states, famine states. Today, unfortunately, we're in a state of feast. And there's a lot of consequences to that, even where I cite a study that it's setting up different diseases, even cancer, because we don't change our diets, and also because we don't fast. So ancient cultures were forced into these states, but we need to learn. So pay attention. But autophagy is a big one. And I think most people listening to this have heard the word, but just as a review, your body gets rid of bad cells, bad DNA. even the rubbish that our body accumulates, even bad bacteria in our gut. Matter of fact, you see down there, the last one, number 7, it resets our microbiome. During a fasting state, literally, we reset our microbiome. And I just did a lecture actually today on the fact that, and this was to doctors, where does real immunity come from? And I talked about the gut, but I said it's not just as easy as taking bacteria or probiotics. Not so simple. We have to reset the microbiome and create more diversity. And that is really the expression of really good health and immunity. But really, I went on to teach how fasting strategies is the only way we add enough stress to the microbiome to actually create the diversity. So we get this microbiome reset and diversity with fasting. Even oddly, because when you're in a fasting state, you actually starve down all bacteria. But the reset is where the magic is. You actually turn off bad genes. So if we're going backwards now, if you look at number 6, I'll put my cursor there in case you can see it, but resets the DNA. You actually turn off genes that get turned on because of stressors in our life, like whether it's a thyroid gene, weight loss resistant gene. Those genes epigenetically, stressors turn them on. We really need times of fasting to actually turn them off. So studies show this, and I cite many of those studies. The hormone optimization, number 5, is massive. So in a fasting state, we actually raise up growth hormone, and our cells become more hormone sensitive. And all these hormonal magical things happen with the stress of fasting. And 4 is one of my favorites, energy diversion. It takes all this massive amounts of energy to actually digest and assimilate food. And when you're not eating, it just doesn't like sit on that energy. No, it takes it and diverts it into healing that it wanted to do years ago. But it just said, hey, I'm just keeping you alive here, but okay, I have this extra energy. I'm going to heal that liver now, or that whatever it is that it needed to heal, but literally prioritize its energy just to keep you alive, right? And then elevated ketones. When we look at studies on ketones, fixing the brain, fixing the gut, even turning off bad genes, it's really levels that you typically don't hit in just a ketosis diet. You typically need higher levels that you can only reach in a state of fasting or famine. So we'll talk about that. And then stem cells surge when you get rid of a bad cell via autophagy, right? So your body in a fasting state, as I already mentioned, gets rid of bad cells, but it doesn't just get rid of them, it recreates a new one from a stem cell. So literally, you get rid of bad and create new. Now, we know that happens because in a fasting state, we see this drop in immune cells, which in the old days, when I used to teach fasting in the 90s, they said, fasting is no good. It lowers your immune system, right? It's like, well, we didn't have an answer except, look, all we know is it shuts off autoimmune and your good immune gets better. But now we have an answer. Studies show that it's getting rid of these senescent immune cells. These are immune cells that live too long and drive hyperimmunity, inflammation, food allergies, autoimmune, right? All that's bad. It gets rid of those cells. And then via the stem cell, it creates a new immune cell that's vigilant. It's not overactive. It's young. It's naive. It doesn't hyperreact to certain foods. So, we as a group of doctors, we could never get people well without fasting and fasting strategies. So just as a key point there, but
let me ask you real quick,
yeah.
And maybe this is something you address later on, but to what extent are the benefits that you're talking about things that we get from adequate time-restricted eating windows? So if we have, let's say, a 14-hour, 16-hour nightly fasting window, is that, I assume that there's at least some degree of overlap in these mechanisms that are at play.
Sure.
But to what extent do you think that people would get, really all of these same benefits from a daily or nightly 16-hour fasting window versus doing, let's say, a 3-day, 5-day, 10-day water fast?
Yeah, great question. I think, right now, intermittent fasting daily is very in vogue. I do it. I've done it for many, many years. I typically eat in a 4-hour window. You'll see one of my strategies talks about why, if you do that, you need these feast days. They're as important as those days where you just eat one meal, for example. But to answer your question, I found studies all the way down to about 15 hours, you get some autophagy in stem cell recreation. Now, not as much as more of an extended fast. So I do about 4 fasts a year, 2 of which are partial fasts, where I get my calories around 600 to 800 a day. Protein to stay in autophagy. You not only have to reduce calories to stimulate autophagy, but you also have to reduce protein because it will knock you out of autophagy. So for me, I keep my protein right around 15 grams a day, depending on body size. Bigger people could do a little more, smaller people might need a little less, but decreasing protein and calories is what I call partial fast. I learned it from a French guy, Albert Maziri, years ago. Walter Longo and his group have made it more popular with the Prolone diet, which is a partial fast that they put in boxes, which is great. But restricting calories is a 5-day fast that I do twice a year. I do 2 water fasts a year. So extended fast, which I like 5 days, and I've done 5 days for years. And now some of Walter Longo, who developed the fasting mimicking diet, Prolone, if you will, has really found in their research that day 4 of a fast, you get this max autophagy. So yes, you do get some autophagy in a 15-hour fast, but 4 days you see this massive number. And in my book, I talk about how to measure that when you hit max autophagy. With you looking at your glucose and ketones, you can do it at home. And then day 5, you get a maximum stem cell. So that's why I like more 5-day fasts, especially to reverse certain conditions, right? But to your point, though, you get some of the same benefits, all of which even fasting 15 hours, which is intermittent fasting.
Gotcha. Thank you.
Cool. Yeah, great question, though, because, I think that even with this topic that I'm going to show you here, are the tricks that we learned around fasting strategies and low carb. It works for the same for intermittent fasting that it does longer fasts. But okay, so if we look at this next PowerPoint, these are the things no one wants to talk about in our world oftentimes right now, right? And I speak at, I've spoken at Low Carb USA, like keto, all the keto things, right? Bulletproof, KetoCon, all of them. And when I say to the audience, okay, how many people, and I see a show of hands, it's stunning how many people are affected by this. Okay, so let's look at the 4 problems. Weight loss resistance. Okay, meaning you just stop losing weight, or you can't lose weight even when you're in like super low carb, right? On long-term low carb diets, like ketosis, muscle loss and fat storage, I call it skinny fat, with long-term intermittent fasting and or low carb. So these are the pitfalls that people run into, right? And they kind of don't know what's going on, right? So either you could stop losing weight, you can't lose weight at all, or you start actually losing muscle and fat storage. That happened to me, okay? I was like, majorly in ketosis, I'm very disciplined, and I'm down to, 5 grams of carbs a day. And I'm getting weaker in the gym. And I'm now getting this belly fat. Like, what the heck, right? I'm getting more disciplined. And, searching around, I felt low carb diets cause insulin resistance. And I'm like, wait a minute. Well, it doesn't cause an insulin resistance like it does from a disease process like diabetes, but it does it from an intelligence. The DNA of the cell literally will shut down and tone down an insulin receptor. Why? Because when you're low carb or doing a lot of fasting, the body can think it's starving. Or you have to understand, the cells can use 2 things for energy, sugar or fat. So when you shift over to where it's mostly 95% of its energy is fat, it eventually goes, my only goal for you is to survive and keep you alive. So if this is my only energy, I'm going to start using less of it. So it blunts the insulin receptor, creates a resistance. And, insulin's a fat storing hormone. So all of a sudden you're holding on to your fat. Oh, even at the cost of taking muscle through gluconeogenesis and breaking it down to sugar. It happened to me. And then I was at, it was at a conference in Florida. It was in, Orlando. And then Joe McCullough comes up and says, Dan, I'm just like doing keto. Does this ever happen to you? I'm getting weaker. I feel like I'm putting on more fat. Do you know any tricks around that? I said, I know exactly what's going on, Joe. And basically told him, okay, here's what you have to do. I'm getting to the answer. Okay. So I'm going to teach you what I taught Joe. It worked for him, worked for me. Right. But anyways, these are real problems that everyone eventually is affected by. It just really depends on your genetics oftentimes, but women's success in general on low carb diets or fasting becomes a problem. More so than men, admittedly. Hormone issues such as thyroid, adrenals, while low carb diets or fasting. These people run into problems sooner than others. Okay, so what are the problems? And really, more importantly, I would say, what are the answers? I kind of tipped you off here. Problem number one, I kind of went into this, Ari, a little bit, but so during low carb, the body will try to preserve its precious fuel, right? Because in low carb state, remember, you shift from being sugar burner, carbohydrates, to mostly burning fat. So it wants to preserve that because its number one thing is always survival. So it will slow down lipolysis, aka fat burning, by taking up more water in a fat cell. All right, so what does that look like? I'll tell you what that looks like. It's very annoying because you get this dimply fat that you never had before. And you're like, what is that, right? It's like, even if you're skinny, it's like, what is this right here? Well, it's just your body's trying to slow down fat burning by filling the fat cells with a little bit of water, and you get this weird dimply fat. Not pleasant to look at, I'm sure you. And then I already went over this one. It will blunt the insulin receptor to hold on to fat. The little wood pile there example, if you look at the PowerPoint here. So if you look at the pile to the right, it's dwindled down to nothing. And if you look at this, abundance pile here on the left picture, the example is this, Ari, if you were in a cabin in the middle of the woods in Alaska and you saved up enough wood to go through your typical winter, right? And you had that wood that knows it makes you through the winter, keeps your cabin warm. But this winter is extremely cold. And you're saying, man, my wood pile is diminishing fast. That's what's left. It's like, I better slow down burning it, AKA slow down fat burning, right? I need this precious fuel to survive. I'm going to slow down burning it. This is your metabolism saying I'm going to burn less fat. Then a friend comes over, and I'm tipping my hand now to the answer. A friend comes over and says, well, oh gosh, man, you're almost out of wood. I have so much. Listen, I'll dump some more off at you. And then all of a sudden your wood pile looks like that one on the left. And what are you going to do? You're not going to keep, your cabin at 55 anymore. You're going to rev up the metabolism. You're going to start burning more wood because you now have plenty. So keep that in your mind, because that's what a feast day can actually do, or a month. We'll talk about that. Problem number two, though, is this study and many others shows that low insulin actually can increase glucose. So if you're low insulin long enough, one of insulin's jobs, according to this study, is one of its main jobs is shutting off gluconeogenesis. So that means that in a low insulin state, you can all of a sudden start to dump glucose out of your liver random, not good times. You can start making glucose from muscle. So all of these things happen. And when insulin gets too low, it doesn't down-regulate gluconeogenesis. And all that means, folks, is that you'll start making glucose from other places. And we start to see a rise in glucose, which isn't good. That can actually lead to muscle loss and stop weight loss. So we don't like that. Problem three, hormones need insulin to actually convert to other more active hormones. And the example I gave here is T4 is an inactive form of thyroid hormone. To convert that to an active form, T3, which that's the one that connects to your cell and makes you burn fat and feel better, well, it needs insulin to do that. So when you're low insulin for a long time and you already have a thyroid challenge of some sort, right, where your thyroid hormones are just low, maybe because of toxicity or other stressors, now those are the people that get really hit by this. And that's why we say thyroid people can't fast, thyroid people can't be low carb. Well, they can. You just need these biohacks. Okay, so and other hormones also need insulin to convert. So therefore, it can be this fire that we need for hormones. And let's look at the answers. Any comments on that, Ari? I just opened up the problems. I am going to talk about the answer here.
Yeah. So on the thyroid issue specifically, let's say if it is the case that long-term keto diets reduce conversion from T4 to T3 such that many people get symptoms, and I know that there's a number of studies showing that long-term keto diets do indeed reduce T3. Is there any takeaway that we can glean from that insight that may suggest whether this is a good approach long-term or not? Like, what are your takes on, what is your take on whether a keto diet is something to adhere to as sort of your baseline normal diet long term, or whether this is something to do short term as a sort of short term strategy to ramp up fat loss or get other benefits of keto diets.
Yeah, gosh, it's like we rehearsed this. You must be a really good interviewer. You're setting me up perfectly. So
that's just the question that came naturally to my mind. But I've talked a lot about this topic over the years.
That's great. That's great. Twice now I said, that's a great question. Honestly, I really mean it. That's a great question. Because I'm a believer even in you'll see this, you see the word here, you look at the next PowerPoint, but let's look at it and pull away. It says diet variation. So I'm a believer in varying the diet weekly, monthly, and seasonally. So to answer your question is, I'm not a believer in staying in a low carb state always, especially in as strict as keto. Now, with that said, I love keto, right? I mean, gosh, I use it for thyroid conditions. I use it for hormone conditions. I use it for a lot of things. However, long term, I believe no ancient culture stayed in a state of, don't run that. I believe no culture stayed in a state of ketosis long. The moment they had carbohydrates, they busted out of it. Right. So Alaskans, you name it.
To that note, I mean, I've talked to some people over the years and this perspective used to be more common many years ago within the paleo and ancestral movement and the early keto movement. But it was common to encounter people who would say things like, keto diets are our ancestral diet. We're meant to be in ketosis all the time. Ketones are the preferred fuel of our cells. And this is, how our body's supposed to operate all the time. This is the way our ancestors did it all the time. Mm-hmm. And the reality, as you alluded to there, the reality is all, pretty much all the research on modern day hunter-gatherer tribes has shown that basically none of them are eating anything close to a ketogenic diet on a long-term basis. Some of them definitely go into fasting in periods of ketosis by virtue of fasting, but not a ketogenic diet. And even I think you were getting at this, but even the Inuit have been shown not to be in a state of ketosis despite living in a place that's basically all ice with almost no plant foods available and eating, whale blubber and things like that. They found that even the amount of glycogen, carbs in just the meat that they're consuming, like from seals and fish and things like that, just when you eat those things fresh, you get enough carb content from that to keep you out of ketogenesis. And so it's interesting that I think the ancestral argument is periods of ketosis as a result of primarily fasting rather than a prolonged ketogenic diet absolutely, has, a large amount of evidence to support the idea that would have benefits.
Well, I couldn't agree more with you. Now, again, keto people or paleo people, they hate us for that, but I believe the science backs us, and I will show some of that. And I believe when we study ancient cultures, to your point, that backs up what we're saying as well. The magic is really in the varying the diet. So the lecture that I gave to the doctors today was, really when we look at improving real immunity, it is, this diversity in the microbiome, but we don't create it by just taking pills. It's impossible, actually. We do it by creating this hormetic stress where the body has to adapt. Well, how do we do that? We put people in and out of fasting states, and then it forces the microbiome to adapt. And just like exercise, you get stronger if you adapt, right? If you keep your exercise routine the same, you actually not only plateau, but you actually lose results. So diet variation works the same way. We adapt. And one of the ways the body does adapt to survive is via the microbiome. So we can create a diversity in the microbiome, which has a dramatic effect on our hormones and, in fact, our gut health and our immune health in general. So when you look at this, and I'm going to show you the strategies. There are weekly strategies, and I really dedicate 2 chapters to my book, Beyond Fasting, to this principle. And there's monthly strategies that I'll show you that are just amazing, taking 5 to 7 days a month and, doing high carb or high protein. And I believe, doing different ones at different times is worth the magic right there. Ladies, I'm addressing you again because this really pertains to you. If you look at the time right before your cycle, that's when you would say, oh, that's when I fall off my diet. That's when I have all the cravings. Well, there might be a reason for that. Your innate intelligence knows, because remember I said you need insulin to make a lot of hormone conversions. Well, guess when all these hormone conversions are happening? Right then. So therefore, the body instinctively gives you cravings. So what we've learned is to take those 5 days and drive up with some high, and again, healthy carbs during that time. This is the time to eat the chocolate, it'd be now. But what happens is you make better hormone conversions. And this is really true for women who already have low hormone levels, right? And when we do this magic, the rest of their month, it's hormone magic. So I'll go through that again. And then we just kind of discuss seasonally even why it's really important to move in and out of these states. But I want you to fully understand why it works. Okay, we kind of talked about this, Ari, and I can tell already that you and I really resonate on this. But you know, the body, all it wants to do really is survive. It's its number one priority. It's adapt or die. And we can utilize that for our advantage, but it can also work against us. But major diet shifts drive survival adaptation mechanism. And adaptation occurs due to hormone optimization. So let me give you an example. I think your followers, you guys talk a lot about, like, you know, dipping into cold water at times, or, you know.
Absolutely. Yeah. Hormesis is a big area of emphasis of mine.
Absolutely. Okay. So what's happening? You know, I cited just a study here to prove my point, but one of the things that happens is you have this upregulation of norepinephrine. That's a hormone that actually downregulates inflammation, and it upregulates growth hormone. And you even get luteinizing hormone that rises, which raises testosterone. I mean, all these great things from cold. Well, in this study, they looked at animals that were not able to lose weight. They genetically triggered the gene, actually, but they put them in cold temperatures, and they realized that they were able to start losing weight. So the question became why. One of the things they discovered is one bacteria associated with obesity and diabetes virtually disappeared. So the Akkermansia bacteria disappeared. Why? You know, because one of the ways the body adapts is changing the microbiome, right? So we know that is part of this incredible adaptation process that affects your hormones. And then I know all your viewers can relate to this. So what happens during exercise if you adapt, right? Not if you overtrain. If you adapt, you have a rise in growth hormone, norepinephrine, which downregulates inflammation. Your cells become more hormone sensitive. That's what we want. We don't like hormone resistance. Luteinizing hormone rises, which raises T, right? Your testosterone. You increase your mitochondrial function. Okay, but if exercise stays the same, Ari, right? What's going to happen is you don't force adaptation. Therefore, you don't get results. Matter of fact, studies show they actually taper off. Okay, so we have to change exercise. The moment, any good trainer knows this, right? It's like, okay, you do some days high intensity, some days low, some days high reps, some days low, these movements. The more you change, the more the body has to go, oh, I have to change, I have to adapt. And if the adaptation is what creates the hormone optimization. Everyone following me?
Mm-hmm.
I know you are. Okay. Does the body have to adapt to diet change? I think I proved the point of saying, yes, it does. The microbiome is part of that adaptation. That's the first example I gave you. Your metabolism gets a benefit from this diet change. Your mitochondria, literally the bad ones that have trouble burning fat, they don't adapt. Bad mitochondria don't make this dietary shift. It's pretty cool. So our DNA are programmed for these changes. I really do believe that. And these changes are just based on survival. So ultimately the body wants to survive. So what do we see? This looks familiar. I mean, that looks like what I just showed you for exercise, right? So when you change your diet, we see a rise in growth hormone, rise in norepinephrine, hormone sensitivity, increase in luteinizing hormone, you know, an increase in microbiome production. So, I mean, it looks the same is what happens when we exercise, when we do a diet change. Okay. I don't know how I'll focus on this. You tell me how educated your people are. Have you ever heard?
High level is good.
Okay.
Yeah.
There's a word called mTOR, and plant-based people hate this word. Okay. They think mTOR, it ages you prematurely. I mean, which if you stay in mTOR, they're right. Okay. Bodybuilders, they love mTOR. So let's look at what stimulates it. Of course, feasting, a lot of calories in general. Increased calories, yes. High carb will throw us into this state. High protein throws us into this state. Now, there's an opposite pathway called autophagy. I already mentioned. This is a catabolic pathway. This is where your body gets rid of bad cells, right? Talked about it. Fasting does this. Restricted calories does this. Low carb does this. Low protein does this. So exact opposite pathways. See that? Okay. Now, the mTOR people with the bodybuilders, they hate autophagy, right? Oh my God, I don't want to get rid of cells. I work so hard to keep them. Plant-based people hate mTOR. Oh my God, you age prematurely. The balance is both. The fact is we need times of anabolic, we need times of catabolic. During these feast-famine cycles where we force dietary change, we actually drive both of these pathways and can benefit from this anabolic healing. When you put a bodybuilder on steroids, short term, here's the first thing. Oh my God, my joints feel better, right? They're experiencing this mTOR pathway that's healing. Then they continue down that road, they get into new problems. The autophagy. I'll give an example here. Do you remember, Ari, the Biosphere 2 project?
Yeah, the one that the movie Biodome was made out.
Yeah. So they built this pristine environment, right? They 7 scientists to go in here for 2 years. The whole point of it was restricted calories, right? Fasting states create such an anti-aging. Out of everything we've studied, the only thing that really works anti-aging is caloric restriction. Okay, so they go in there at a 30% deficit. Okay, and 2 years later, fail. They became catabolic, their organs shrunk, their immune systems were lower, and they were basically, heading more towards death. Okay, proves that autophagy too long is bad.
Yeah. Bodybuilders,
what's the average age? 62. mTOR too long is bad. But what if we do a little bit of mTOR, a little bit of autophagy? That's the magic. So that really is the deep answer of why this.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a really excellent way of explaining it. And, you get these long-term consequences of excessive mTOR activation. You get proneness to cancer, excessive cell growth, hanging on to damaged and dysfunctional cells that should have been gotten rid of via autophagy. And then on the other hand, frailty, sarcopenia is the leading cause of death in old age. So we really need to hang on to muscle and make sure we're doing enough tissue building. And so how do you balance those? And it's just understanding, things are not good or bad. They're meant to be in the proper balance,
Absolutely. That's it. So before I get into the how-to here, I just want to remind people of okay, when are these diet variations? And again, I'm going to teach you the weekly, monthly, and the seasonal. Again, we're talking still about when and how, or when and why. Not fat adapting, meaning you're maybe not getting in ketosis, or just simply stop losing weight, even on low carb or whatever diet you're on for that matter. That's the second point, not losing weight. Losing weight, muscle weight, but getting skinny fat. I talked about that, right? That was me. I was losing muscle, and Joe, losing muscle, gaining fat in the wrong places. Even if you want to just gain muscle and therefore gain weight, this is a strategy. It actually works to gain muscle. So no energy, and whatever diet you're on, ketosis, whatever it is. And I already said hormone conditions, especially thyroid conditions, adrenal conditions. So, okay, the how-to, I kind of tip my hand to this as well, but the 511 is just the most basic form that everyone listening can start this right away, right? So let's say you're doing 5 days of paleo, keto, low carb. You name it. You pick it, as a matter of fact. And we already talked about it's good to change. So I'm just using keto as an example because I use this for a group of keto people, right? So I had to use their diet. But whatever 5 days, right? So here you are in a low carb for 5 days. Then you take one random day a week and just eat one meal. So what you're doing, and that was Ari's question earlier, is you're getting some autophagy, that catabolic state, for about 23 hours, right? And there's magic in that. Your body will utilize the bad cells and clean some rubbish up. But if you do that strategy too long, your body will think it's starving. Remember the woodpile? So you take one random day of the week and you feast. Mine's always Saturday. But I'm going to say right now that if you have some of those challenges that I mentioned, thyroid, adrenals, perimenopause, hormone problems in general, I'm going to say more feast days actually work better for you. So maybe you add in 2 or 3 feast days. So you can do any random combination. So, Ari, I interviewed Kristen Verde. She's on a lot of the studies, and she studied high-fat diets, low-fat diets, different diets against a feast-famine diet where it's high calories, low, high calories, low. Actually, what they did was standard American diet, 500 calories a day, standard American diet, 500 calories a day. And it worked for weight loss better than all the other diets. I said, why do you think that is? And she says, well, it forces adaptation. The microbiome shifts, your hormone shifts. That's exactly right. It forces the body to adapt, and you get a hormone optimization, which creates you to burn fat more efficiently, everything I just showed you. So more random oftentimes works better, but you can adjust it around.
And it could be further optimized by maybe not doing the standard American diet, but doing something healthier.
Right, exactly. Of course, yeah. I don't do that, but that's
I get that's what you're saying. You're saying you're taking that and extending it and saying let's do a better, more optimal, healthier version of that.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do you can add more stress by adding 2 more days of fasting, right? So 4-2-1. So the 2 could then represent 1 meal a day, 2 days. I do it about 2 or 3 days a week, but let me express this. The feast days are as important as the fast days. Now, you have 2 camps of people, Ari. You have your people that you have to beg them to do feast days. Then you have the group over here, we have to beg them to do fast days. So you have to find out where you are, right? And kind of, lean into it from there. But, the magic truly is in this variation. The feast famine works. It reminds the body it's not starving, yes, but it also forces adaptation, just like how you would adjust your exercise routine during the week.
Mm-hmm. All right. Excellent. Good stuff.
Here is the monthly variation. Now I talked a little bit about it, but let's put some numbers to it or some ideas to it here. So 5 days a month of a feast, I think, is magic. For male, female, doesn't matter. A little bit longer, you do get more of the shock to the system. So, of course, where I learned it was working with perimenopausal women, adrenal or thyroid cases, where we take 5 days and drive up the carbs. And for women, yes, it is best to do it the 5 days before their cycle. Randomly, any 5 days for anyone else. But again, just as a reminder, the theory is, you increase insulin, and it helps many hormones, the conversions such as estrogen, T4 to T3, et cetera. And then the other magic here is you could take it to the next level. If that's all you did, you're going to do better. But if you say, well, you know what, I'm going to do 5 days a month of a famine, right? Really imitate ancient cultures. To your point, this is really the keto magic, right? Because you get much higher keto levels in a famine or fasting state than you do just being in ketosis. So I do this whether I'm in ketosis or not, and get more benefit from ketones. So 5 days a month of a famine, do a partial fast, get your calories under 1,000, protein under 20 for 5 days a month. Watch what happens. I'm telling you. And then add the 5 days of feast in. So weekly.
Do you pair the 5 fasting days right after the 5 feasting days?
I've had many people do it that way.
Okay.
And we've experimented with a bunch of different ways. And you know what? It seems like it doesn't matter much.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So have fun with it. Whatever works for your schedule. Hey, it doesn't even have to be perfect months. You could do 5 days of a feast. Maybe it takes you a whole nother month to do a 5 fasting days, right? I like just doing pure water fast, do partial fast, mix it up, have fun with it. But I'm telling you, you add this variation in, and magic happens hormonally, and it's all about adaptation.
Yeah, absolutely.
You asked me this question. So what about seasonal variation? I believe it's a must. And this study, I think, is great. If you just read from the abstract, I quoted it here. It just says the last half century has brought stark changes in lifestyle that depart from normal diurnal cycles, meaning eating, seasonally, and periodic fluctuations in food availability. All right. Thus, modern times may be characterized as being constantly in a feast environment. Of course we are. We have food all the time. But the cellular consequences may be an increase at risk for several diseases, including cancer. So, more and more studies are showing that just staying on the same diet is one of the most dangerous things we can actually do. And if you look at this, Ari, right, you and I kind of tipped our hand at where we both feel is right. Who is right? the vegans? Is it the paleo? Is it the plant-based people, the keto? What about the new carnivore diet, the super carb diet? All of these diets can be shown to actually lose weight. All of these diets can be, everyone hangs their, shingle in one of those diets. And Ari, it's typically the diet that helped you. Meaning, listen, my life was horrible and I became a vegan. I feel so much better. Now, what they forget is a year later, now they have new symptoms and they don't think it's the vegan diet because that helped them. Right. But meanwhile, it could be the vegan diet for multiple reasons. And I'll pick on paleo, I'll pick on keto the same way. We already did. Right. So the point is the magic is in the change, not as much the diet. Yeah, every one of those diets have benefits.
Well said.
Yeah. Even the carnivore diet, right? You get these people, right, and they follow the carnivore diet, and they show their blood work. Like my cholesterol dropped, this dropped, that dropped, right? And it's like, so they make this thing that we should be in a carnivore diet all the time, and I just go, oh my gosh. It's like, okay, I get it. I mean, short-term carnivore diet will clean the house, man.
Yeah.
But stay there, you're gonna have new problems.
Yeah, for sure. Maybe with that one more than anything.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah.
All right, so this is one of the things that woke me up. I spent some time with a little hunting gathering tribe in Zimbabwe. Well, it was north. We drove 8 hours into the bush to get to this tribe that had recently just come out of the deep mountains because of a severe drought. And those clothes that you're seeing were given to them because they came down into where these other tribes exist. And World Vision gave them the clothes. But the people that brought me there said something unique. They said, Dr. Pompa, I know you have a hard stop. This is my last point, by the way. So, Dr. Pompa, we noticed that this tribe has no disease even to speak of, and yet they don't even eat. And I said, no. They eat. They're just eating. They're still hunting, gathering. Let them go. Do not give them food. Nor, he said, they don't accept it. They don't want it. They want to stick to their ways. I said, that's smart. So it was just amazing. I could tell you story after story about that tribe. But anyways, this is the last one. Neurotoxins, and I'll just say this because it's huge in my treatment.
And I should mention, we have Warren Phillips doing another presentation on cellular detox. I know you guys are, I think, business partners.
Yeah, exactly. Him and I developed a product called Cyto Detox, which helps detox, right? But, toxins can affect start hormone problems. It will, absolutely lead to failure and fasting and, weight gain problems, hormone problems. So cellular detox is what I've taught for 20 years. Matter of fact, I got Warren's life back. He was working in environmental industry and he got very sick. And anyways, I had him read some of my work, and he's been a passionate partner of mine in spreading the message because of his own story. So, well, thank you, Arya. I hope this is a blessing.
Yeah, this was awesome. And I think it's such a perfect addition and supplement to all the other information that we're getting. No one else has talked on this topic of diet variation. And I agree with you. I think it's a really critical factor, very powerful, very overlooked. So I really appreciate you sharing this information. I think it's awesome stuff. It's brilliant. Thank you so much, Dr. Pompa. For people who are interested in following your work or learning more from you and the products, books, and programs you offer, where's the best place to do that?
Yeah, just go to my website, drpompa, Pompa.com. So drpompa.com. And you can find my book there. You can find my other things, my Facebook, where I have a huge following, but check it out.
Beautiful. Thanks so much, man. That was great.
Awesome. Thanks, Ari.
Hey there, this is Ari again. Thank you so much for listening to this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, if you found it valuable, please share it with your friends, share it with your family, help me get the word out there. Also, if you're on YouTube, make sure to hit the subscribe button and hit that little bell to get notifications every time we release a new video or new episode of the podcast. And if you're listening to this, make sure to subscribe to this podcast on iTunes or on your favorite podcast app. Thanks so much for supporting my work at the Energy Blueprint. I hope you enjoyed this episode. I will see you in the next